Welcome to After Hours, everyone. Today was a last minute project, and I mean seriously last minute. As of yesterday, day before, I had no idea what I was going to do. So I knew it had to be a quick and easy type of fun thing. And so where I was going with that. And this project, so it's quick stitching. We've got the 4th of July coming up, that's patriotic, and I had that in my mind, but I also was thinking about doing sketch, like Trapunto work. And one of the things that I do, or if I'm especially at a roadblock, is I go to the Embrilliance project blog and see what has already been created, especially if there's a technique that I haven't used in a while. Because in the Embrilliance project blog, there are a whole bunch of designs already digitized, and they're in the BE format. So if you have StitchArtist, you can open them up and check out the settings, see how things are done. You get to see all the objects in it. So I was gonna work on a Trapunto quilt block. That's what my original thought was, and I got wrapped around the axle. As far as wrapped around the axle, it was really what happened to me. I was trying to force the software to create a sketchy scribble design around it, like that wild look, by using a fill stitch and trying to do gradients and feather edges. And and it had a hole in it, and we all know what holes do. And I was really working hard. I said, wait a minute, I know Eric has done the USA. I said, so let me go take a look at that. And as I was looking at his design, I said, this would be perfect to make into a mug rug. No, it's right upside down here. So I was thinking, so all I needed to do was make sure that this design was 5x7 and add a back to it. So, and this is a real easy back. So thinking about those two things in mind. So I had to make the design 5x7, and I knew it was larger. And after reading his blog post, he kind of made a few observations about what would happen if you shrunk the design. So I had to keep those observations in mind because this is a BE working file. The original size of this design is for a big hoop. 8x12 hoop or 6x10 hoop. It's larger design, so that's impressive on a sweatshirt. Oh, and I got something in my eye. That happens. Anyway, so what happened, since this is drawn objects and it's a running stitch, that's how he created all those scribbles. It's going to adjust the stitches on. We're going to take a look in the software so that you can actually understand why he made that statement on, if you simply shrink it, the lines are going to get closer together. It's not going to make them less dense. So, two things I needed to do with this. I had to address that, filling my 5x7 hoop, and then address how am I going to make that envelope back. So I know how to do that from other in the hoop projects I've done. It's real simple, running a stitch. I just put two folded pieces of fabric on top of each other in the back, and this encloses the embroidery design. So, and this was stitched on, well, you can't really see. I did post a picture earlier on this in the StitchArtist page about the loft. And I used actually 2 layers of batting on this so that it actually is a little bit raised. It's very, very pretty, very pretty. And for those of you that don't have StitchArtist, keep an eye out on the Embrilliance project blog because this little adjusted design will be available as a free download. So if you don't have StitchArtist, don't fret. It'll be ready so that you can stitch them up. This was fixed or digitized, created, adjusted to what I need, and stitched to be my final test sew in less than an afternoon. So, and I have a few more to do because I'm going to give them as gifts. Easy peasy project, so don't stress about it. So let's pop on into the software and take a look at this design. All right. This is the USA Trapunto design. And as I mentioned, when you expand your little object list here, you can see all the settings that are built into here, all the little objects, how this was exactly digitized. So, I mean, this is only a 4-color design. You can see that here. And this particular design has 54 objects. It's only 4 colors, but there's 54 objects. And that's because he simply didn't create an object and pop a hole in it. These are all running stitches. And that's what makes it so cool, because it is a great example of drawing with points. Let's see. Amber says, before I get started here, what is Trapunto? Well, you want to read the blog post, but it's when you do stitching in on your design, and whatever is not stitched is actually raised up. So think of an embossed design on a towel, except this is done on quilters cotton. This is just white quilters cotton that it's done on. Actually, it's a little beige. And you put batting behind it, so all the stitches flatten the stitches. You can stitch this on a towel and it will flatten the nap. It's kind of like a knockdown stitch. Stitch it on a fluffy t-shirt or fleece, and that fluffiness is flattened. So it's kind of like using a knockdown stitch, but in an artistic way. So like an embossed design. Anyway, okay. So how did he... I'm looking at all these objects. Like I said, 54 of them. That's a lot. So each one is outlined here. So let's get into StitchArtist. And I'm going to go into StitchArtist level 1 just so that you can see something like this could be digitized in StitchArtist level 1, because it's just draw with points. Seriously, super easy. So his first object here, and let me select this design and hit the S key so we make it as big as possible as my hoop. All right. So the first run, or first object here, and this is red, is just a running stitch. And seriously, you see each node? That's a left click, left click. Actually, these are control left clicks because they're straight nodes going across. And that's created a running stitch, and it has a double run. So it goes back and forth on twice. It goes to the end and then comes back, because that's where your start and stop is, and has a stitch length. And that creates that's the first color of the red. The next color of the red, and you can see, yes, there's going to be a jump stitch that goes from this part up to this part. It has to happen because there's no place to travel. It's going to happen that way. The next one, this is the line going across. And again, it's just left clicks on either side, creating random shapes, directing where the stitches are going to go. And it has a start and stop, so it's a double run going right at the same place. And it jumps over to the next one. So just looking at this, I'm like, okay, so the design I was working on was like a pineapple type quilt. Now I'm understanding, as opposed to trying to force a hole and using the fill and the gradient stitches, this is the look I was trying to go for. Just draw it. Click, 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 click. Easy peasy. And being able to look at this, that's how you can see, all right, well, these have been rather simple parts of it. This is straight. There's no hole here. This is a little section here, and it varies on the edge to give that little feathered look. This is inside, so it goes from one side to the next side, but it's still, the width is varying between each one of the rows of stitches. It's not mathematically perfect, but this is a cool look. This part, well, how can you do this? The embroidery machine is like putting your pencil on the paper and drawing continuous lines. That's what you're telling it to do. And it has to start at one point and finish someplace else, but there's a hole. So think about it. This is how it's going to work. He's got a running stitch, and it's only a single run. And it starts here, and it goes up here to the top. Then he has this double run that does a single line going across and all the way down to the bottom, and it ends back up here at the very beginning. So it's done single up to here, moves on over, does its double run back up to here. Now it's going to come up here, do a double run to fill up to the top, but end at the bottom, because it's going to go ding, 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 and ding, 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 back at the bottom. I mean, this is how it's pathing. And then it repeats this exact object. Look, object number 4 is object number 7 down here at the bottom, so that it's like a double run, but it ends down here at the bottom. I mean, elegant. This is thinking through how can you path this so you have the minimum amount of runs, and we can do this more creatively than any computer can. It would fill it, but it wouldn't give it that uneven look of scribbles. And that's the look. Linda asks, when do you put the USA letters on? Well, this was done, this is how he digitized it. So this had probably USA in the background and the flag. It was, I don't know what the original artwork looked like. I'm looking at what he did. So the USA, that the outline of that is done at the very end. The first stitches that are done, I haven't even gotten through object. What object are we on now? Remember, we have 54 objects. We're only on number 7. So it's the last, and we're only in the red color. So I'm only working, it works one color at a time. I mean, this is just fabulous the way that this design was digitized to create this. And it gave me so much insight as to how I could create my own design, especially the one I'm thinking of is going to only be a single color. But look at how he treated the blue here at the top. Whoops. When you have the scribble of the red and the blue, it's actually feathered in together because that's the style of what this is. So this edge here and this edge, it's the same. I mean, I was trying to force my software to do this and I just couldn't get it. And that's because it's easier to do it by hand. Draw with points. But you can easily, even if you don't have StitchArtist, I mean, you'd be in select mode, even if you just had Essentials or Express, and you're just interested in how things are digitized, you'll still be able to click on every single object. You won't be able to see the stitch properties, but you'll be able to see and think about how it was created so that this doesn't have 6 billion stitches in it, and it's got a nice organic look. So I highly recommend you download this design, check it out, and see how it was done because it's absolutely phenomenal. There are 54 thread changes. The only ones that kind of make that you can see. This is the U outline that's done in black at the very end, the S that finishes us off, and then the inside of the A, and then the outside of the A. Those are the only ones that are whole. Everything else has to be broken up. Oh, okay, maybe this guy down here, this red one at the top and the red one at the top here. Sure, because those are whole, but everything else had to be broken up and thought about. It's fabulous. Fabulous. And I just love this. It's nice. I love to watch stitch files, embroidery designs stitch out and see how they were digitized. But when you have the BE working file and you have StitchArtist, you have access to all the objects. You can see all the stitch properties, everything that goes into this. So Embrilliance project blog has buckets of information on there. Okay, so now that I've kind of seen, and now I've looked at how this design is made up with running stitch lines, now I understand why he said if you shrink this design, the density of the lines isn't going to stay the same. And I guess probably the easiest way for me to show you that is, let me just go to a new design page here. And I'm just going to go into StitchArtist 1, and I'm going to draw a rectangle shape. And I'm going to put a fill stitch in it. So it's got a fill stitch. I'm going to change that color to a better color so that we can actually see it. Orange, that would work. And just for density's sake, just so we can see it, I'm going to change to 24 so that it's wide apart and turn off my underlays so that we can actually see this density of this square, okay? Now, if I take this square, and this is a BE file, so if this was done with fill stitches, and let me go Control C and Control V, just so I have 2 of them, and I take this square and I make it smaller, do you see how the densities stay the same? Yes, the number of stitches change, but the density, the distance between each row of stitches, that changes. That's because this is one object and you shrunk it or made it larger, it doesn't matter, and it repopulates that object with all these stitch properties. So, and when I shrunk it, it used the same stitch properties and still refilled it. So, if this design had been able to be done with fill stitches, I could shrink it and make it bigger. But I was trying to do this with fill stitches, and holes and fill stitches just don't work out right. I just couldn't get the look I was going for. This design that we're working on here, these are all running stitches. So I'm just going to copy this. Control C, I'm going to go over to here, Control V. So this is just the running stitch. If I take this, move it down below, and I shrink this, can you tell the difference? It has the exact same number of lines. They got closer together. Yes, the number of stitches changed, but the object, this is a running stitch object. Click, 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 click. It couldn't get rid of those nodes. This one has the same amount of clicks going back and forth, back and forth. So the density of this, because there is no density in a running stitch. There's a density in a fill stitch. So by resizing this design, that's what he was trying to say. If you make his design smaller, you have to understand that the trapunto, the loftiness, this texture is not going to, it's going to change because of the way that it was digitized. Once I just read it, the first time I read his blog, I was like, oh, okay, that kind of makes sense. And I knew it made sense, but I didn't put click, click, click. I didn't understand it really until I looked at his design to figure out exactly what it is. So, let's see. Janice is checking in. Diane asks, would using the motif fill setting give you the same effect? As far as density goes, sure. If you had a motif assigned to this guy, let's see, a motif run. Let's see, motif fill, add a motif. Let's just fill it with something I have here. And I'm just going to click on this one and go to motif, and it puts the same one that's in there. It's the exact same. It doesn't change the size. It changes the number of them. You see, I can make this one larger, and you see the size of the motif is the same. So that's why, when you digitize in StitchArtist, it is really cool if you're using features like fills and satins and motifs, because when you resize it, it recalculates with whatever setting you have in your properties pane. Doesn't matter the size of them. But this was done with running stitches. Hopefully that's making sense, guys. Anyway, okay. So this design, let me go to the 0 key. So I have my entire hoop here. This design is set up for my 300 by 200 hoop, and I want to make it into a mug rug. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my properties here at the top of the page, and I'm going to go to my hoops. I'm going to scroll down to find my 5x7 hoop. So that is the 130 by 180 because I'm working in the PES format. If you want to make your mug rugs different sizes, knock your socks off. In mine are going to be 5x7, so that's the size that I want. So that's the hoop I'm going to choose. Could you do this without changing the hoop? Sure, but then you have to it's not a visual thing. You have to do math. So I'd rather just be visual and have a lot of reminders because I'm pretty bad at remembering stuff. And anyway, so I'm going to choose my 5x7 hoop in the Brother format, click Apply, click OK. Now the hoop comes in rotated, so I'm going to double click on my hoop because that's the way it's going to be, and you can see that it's too big for that hoop. So when I'm going to stitch this on my PE 770, which is where I was planning on stitching this, it won't work. So it has to be shrunk. So I'm going to select this entire design. I'm going to grab a corner and I'm going to resize it. I want to resize it center out. So when you resize by a corner, if I hold this corner and resize, it anchors all the other corners on this side and shrinks it up. And then you have to recenter it. If you hold down your shift key when you resize, it resizes from center out so that I can watch my numbers change and I can go through here. Actually, hold on. Do you see on the bottom where it says selected and it's red? Everyone see that? I'm kind of pointing with my nose. See that over there? As soon as it turns not red, that means it's going to fit in my hoop. Do you see that? That's kind of cool. Just as a visual thing so that you know. And the only reason I held down the shift key was because I wanted the left side and the right side, I wanted to resize from the center. That's the only thing the shift key does. I'm going to let go of my mouse button and it's resized here. If I wanted to, I could go into select mode and simply type in a number less than 180. Because I know the size of my hoop is 180 millimeters, so I could have simply typed in 179.5 or if I type in 180, it could be a little bit bigger. It doesn't always shrink it exactly. So anyway, I got it to be 179.5. But do you see how there's a little bit of space here at the top and a little bit of space here at the bottom? And I really would like it to fill up my whole 5x7 hoop. Because I can. I want it to do that. And I have the objects here because this is a BE file and I can change, I can adjust this stuff because it's cool. Now let's see. Cindy says, all that you explained is why my stitch out on a sweatshirt didn't do well. So if you resize, and it's not bad. This is resized. That's the only thing I did. I resized it and it stitched out. It's fine. It's just not the same. So it just did a little different. If you wanted it to be, anyway, I wanted to fill my whole hoop. That's where we're going at here. So I don't want to change the size of the USA. I don't want to muck around with the stuff in the middle. And nobody will notice that my little red line in blue at the top is a little taller and the little line here at the bottom is a little longer. Nobody's going to tell. No. If it's that important to you to do that, then this is a lot more work for you. Lisa's all about easy. Wanted this done fast. So how do I leave this center part intact? Because I don't want to muck around with any of these nice little stuff. I don't want to. And I don't want to, could I select the whole thing and just stretch it? Sure, but I like the way that this looks. So I'm going to teach you something new. So what I did is I selected just this bottom part here. So I just clicked on that one color here. The reason that my design, it allowed me to do that is because this design is not grouped. If you happen to open a design and you try to click on just that object and you can't get just that object, you get the whole design, that is because it was under the edit menu, the design is grouped. Many of the designs on the Embrilliance project blog are grouped so that if you click on this, you get the whole design. This particular one wasn't grouped because I didn't have to ungroup it, but I thought I'd bring that up in case you start taking apart one of the Mylar butterflies, Mylar butterflies or one of the patches or something, and you click on it and you get the whole design. So the only thing I want is that bottom object. So I'm going to go to the edit menu and I'm going to choose to ungroup it. Now that does mean you have to be really careful because when you click on this, you can do whatever you want with this. And what I wanted to do with it is take it and just stretch it and make those lines a little further apart. And I'm okay with that because look at the lines over here. Those are a little further apart. This is a little further apart. And you can't tell in my stitch out that they're a little further apart. If anyone had been paying that close of attention that I made it 1/3 of an inch longer or 1/4 of an inch or whatever it was, they don't need my mug rug. The other thing I could have done if that was too much, let me hit undo and get that back to normal, is I can take this guy and move him down a little bit by hitting just my arrow key until he gets to the bottom, grab part of it and move part of that to the top a little taller, then select the white scribble and move that one or stretch that one a little bit because now it's a little more even. And if you have StitchArtist, this is why this is really cool. If you have StitchArtist, when you click on that little object there, you have access to all the nodes. So you could actually move them around wherever you want them to create the density evenly that you want. I mean, that's you're creating something new without having to muck around with all the innard stuff. So I made that's all I did was I stretched it out to the bottom, and maybe I moved a couple of these because now that they are, I think I did move the whites around a little bit. Only the stuff on the bottom here. I didn't touch anything in the middle here because I thought that was perfect. This is the perfect size for the inside part. It didn't need to be taller. It just needed more background space. And it's not an actual flag, so it doesn't matter that it's a little extra. Now, the same thing I did at the top. Same, as far as if you look at click on this guy, do you see that's one big blue one here? And then if I click on this one, that's one big red one. So again, I can select this, move it on up. Select this one. I'm stretching this. Oh, not stretch, not the line. Okay, you want to make sure when you put your mouse cursor on this part here, you're moving, and this is only if you're in StitchArtist. If you're in regular Essentials mode, it's not going to, it doesn't make a difference. But if you're in StitchArtist, you can actually move the lines around as I showed you. You click on a node and you can move that line wherever you want it to be. Fabulous. And that's how I filled up my flag. And I'm like, woohoo, I am done because my seams, I need to put my mug rug. That's where I need to go here. So, first thing, since I did stretch this out a little bit, I do want to make sure, I'm going to go back into select mode, and I'm going to select the entire design here and click on the center button. If you notice when I did that, it did scooch it up just a bit, and that just makes sure that this is centered in my hoop. At this point, if I wanted to group it so that I couldn't accidentally move something, this is a good time. So again, I go to the edit menu and I choose to group it. And now whenever I click on something here in the hoop area, I have to get the whole design. It's just a safety precaution, which is why for most of the free designs on the Embrilliance project blog, you'll find that they are grouped because I'm the one that grouped them, because I find it to be, I know a lot of us just want to click, and we're so used to designs that you click on a design, you get the whole design. If it's not grouped and you just get that one piece and you're not paying attention and you move it, you just threw everything out of whack. And that's not necessarily a good thing. So hopefully you guys are all still here. Hey, Leanne, I see you're checking in under CSI. Nice to see you from down under. All right, so now I need to make this into my mug rug. Okay, well, first of all, as I'm working on this and I've done what I've done, I noticed that I have an asterisk next to my name. If I simply save it, it will overwrite the original. So probably way in the beginning, before I started doing anything, I should have gone to File, Save Working File As, because that's the only one I really need to save. And where am I? I am in my USA mug rug under Facebook Live. That's where I'm going. So I will put down, just call this Facebook Live USA mug rug. Just so that I know what it is. And I probably should have done that way at the beginning because it's a good habit to get into. Saving your work under a new name before you start mucking around with it, that's always a good move. Because if I had saved it over what I had, I'd have to remember where I got it from. And that's not a big deal with this design because I'm giving you the link to where it's from, and you knew you got it from the Embrilliance project blog, so it's easy enough to find. But why, you know, it's easier to how shall I say it? Keep your stuff organized so that you can find it afterwards, so that you're not like, oh, wait a minute, this is a 5x7. I thought it was bigger than that. So anyway, here we go. Back to the project at hand. I need to create this into a mug rug. So in order to do that, you either need to wait for me to get you, the project's going to be on the Embrilliance project blog in the next day or two because they'll have it ready. I have to put it up there. But if you have StitchArtist, and you only need StitchArtist level 1 to do this, this is like the simplest, easiest way of doing this, okay? First of all, you have to know the stitching, there's no button that says, make this into a mug rug, although that would be pretty kind of cool. But there isn't. However, I do know how I want this stitched based upon other mug rugs. And funny, but I have the one I did for the love, which is Valentine's Day. I have the luck one that I did for what do you call it? St. Patrick's Day, and now we have a USA one. So you get into a habit of the process on what works for you. And for this particular one, I knew I wanted batting in it. So the way I did this, is I hooped wash away stabilizer. Okay, and I wanted there to be 2 runs, a placement and a tack down, because I wanted to place my fabric with 2 layers of batting. I needed to know where it went into this so that I could pre-cut my pieces, because I'm going to do a dozen of these, so I might as well make it as easy as possible. Know all the sizes. And so I have 2 layers of batting plus, and it's because I have skinny batting. If you have fat batting or thicker batting, you might only need 1. But for me, I wanted it to be lofty, but not too lofty, so I used 2 layers of batting, because that's the scraps I had. Anyway, so wash away stabilizer, or you could use cheapy tear away. Doesn't matter. I'm walking you through my plan. I need a placement stitch so that I know where those 3 pieces are going to go. And I need another stitch, different, color break, same stitch, to hold them in place. So kind of like an applique. I need a placement and I need a tack down. So that's going to be step number 1 and 2. So I need to create that. I'm going to stitch the design afterwards, and the last thing that's going to stitch is another tack down stitch, but this one will be a little bit more secure because, as you can see, I'm turning this inside out. So I do my placement and tack downs as single runs, and my seaming stitch is either, for this one, I'm just doing double runs, and it works perfectly fine. But as you see, on top of my hoop, where my embroidery is, because this is the back side of it, on top of my hoop, I put 2 pieces of folded fabric so that they're laying on top of each other with a seam in the middle so that it stitches all the way around. And now you have a hole in the middle that you can turn it inside out. So that's my plan. So I have to add 2 running stitches at the beginning, placement and tack down, and then a finishing stitch at the end. Okay. Let's see. Linnell is checking in from Taylorsville, Illinois. Linda Lee is so intrigued, and Heather from Australia, you're still here. Hands on lap, I'm sure. And I just saw something pop in from Jan saying that you're from Pittsburgh and you used to digitize with very antiquated software, and you wanted to go back and get StitchArtist. Well, watch for coupons, because there's holiday coming up, and StitchArtist is like so much fun because you just any design. Even if, this one I had to adjust, but mug rugs, super easy. All right, back to our plan. Okay, well, you know our plan. Placement, tack down, and at the very end, we need a finishing stitch. So, how am I going to do that? Well, they're in StitchArtist, so this has to be done in StitchArtist level 1. Unless you have an existing mug rug design that you just want to add this design to. That's fine, but we're going from scratch. It's going to take less than 2 minutes, but I'm going to talk you through it, so it's going to take a little longer now. I'm going to use this shapes fly out here. Okay, so do you see where the little arrow is? There's shapes. These are pre-drawn shapes, and all you have to do is select the shape you want, left click, hold, and drag, and it creates that shape. It's super easy. So I need a rectangle. I'm going to click on the rectangle, and if you notice in our object pane here, it puts an entry way at the end, and I don't care. We can move it afterwards, so that's not a big deal. I'm going to put my mouse cursor all the way up here in the top. I'm going to left click, hold my mouse, and I'm going to drag it all the way to the bottom. And can you see there's like this little dashed line that's kind of showing you a a shadow or a preview of where this object's going to be. So I'm going to release my mouse button, and there's my rectangle. You can see it's sort of, there's a really skinny line right there. And right here, it says line. And then in our Shapes tab, okay, this is the coolest part of this, is, do you see it has a corner radius? And when I was doing this to start with, my default came in at 0, which means a square, pointed corners. And any of you that have sewing experience, you know you don't want to put pointed corners on anything. It just is harder. You got to clip and point and turn. And if you have rounded corners, you just use a nice chopstick and zing it through and make a nice finished edge, easier to grade. Perfect. So I use this little corner radius guy, and I go to a positive number, somewhere between 5 and 10. You can choose any number you want. I chose 6. And do you see how it made a curve here and a curve here? It did the same one all the way around. Oh, fabulous. Okay, so before I do anything else, because that's my object, I'm going to go over to my select button here because I want to make sure that that rectangle is also centered in the hoop. You know I centered this guy already. So before, because I'm going to just do and copy and paste, so I might as well get it right in the first place. So while this object is selected, I'm just going to click center, not fit, center. So there's 2 buttons, center and fit. We don't want to fit it. I drew it the right size. I'm going to hit center. Slightly, I was pretty darn good at that. But centered button's a good thing. Now I'm going to go back to StitchArtist mode, clicking back on this. I have that object selected. I'm going to go up here to the top where it says these are different stitches you can assign. And I'm going to make it into a running stitch. And in my properties pane here, that's where it says run. And the first stitch I'm going to do is a single stitch. So I don't want it to go double. This is just a placement on my stabilizer all by itself. So I'm going to change the stitch type to a single because there's no need. All it's doing is showing you where to put your stuff. So you don't need to put extra stitches. All you need is a single stitch. And you digitized it. Now the stitch length it put is 2.3 millimeters. And that's just because that's the last stitch type I used. 2.3 is usually what I use for my construction stitches. I use between 2.2, 2.0, depending on the materials that I'm stitching. But 2.3, that's a little tight. And all this stitch is doing is showing me where to put my fabric on the stabilizer. So if you notice here, it says 267 stitches. We've digitized all on our own. I'm going to go up here to change this to 3.3 because that's the number that I used on my other one. And it drops it down to 192 stitches. And that's my placement line. Now, it's got to stitch first, right? We've talked this through and we know this is first and it's last. So all I'm going to do is right click on this here in the top in this object here, my object pane. It's selected, right click on it, and I'm going to choose move first. And it moved it all the way to the top. And I don't really care what color it is as long as it's not red because I want my machine to stop. So if you're stitching this on a single needle, you're going to make sure it's not red. Doesn't matter what color it is. This one came in at black, I guess, because the USA is black. So I picked the last color. Okay? Or whatever color it is, it doesn't matter as long as it's a different color than this one. Okay? And it is the placement stitch. Now I need to make another one. And it needs to be a different color. And it needs to stitch next. And it's going to be my tack-down stitch to hold it into place. So I'm going to, while this guy's selected, I'm going to go up here to copy. Now, if I hit paste, it's going to paste it all the way to the end. And if I had left them both there, I could have done this all in one step. But I want it where I'm at. I moved it to the top because that's where I was thinking. I want it to be placed right after this one. So I could move it down and then move it back up, but there's a shortcut and it's good to remember or know that this exists so that when you're digitizing on your own in the future, like, oh, I know I can do this somehow. Well, if you put your mouse cursor on those stitches in your hoop, and you right click on them, do you see there's a paste? The paste will throw it to the bottom. That's just how paste works. If I do paste under, that means it's going to basically paste it before this one because it's going to be stitching under this one. Well, so that's what this one says. Paste over is going to put it right in between these two, and paste replace is not applicable to this because that would just replace what we have here, which would do absolutely nothing. So what I want to do is I'm going to choose paste over because I want to stitch on top of this one. Hopefully this is making sense, guys. I right clicked in StitchArtist mode, choose paste over, and it put it right there. The only thing I have to do is it's the same color as the first one because it's the exact same stitches. Is I'm going to go to my color chip here, click on the color guy, and I'm just going to choose a color that's already in my design that's not red or black. So I can choose white because I just want my machine to stop. So I'm going to click, and the reason I went to the current, I kind of glossed over that, but that's because I do this all the time. Okay, normally, and I could have easily gone to my threads and just chosen any color I wanted here. But if you are in your design and you are digitizing, it's nice to think, I'm going to use a color that I'm already using. So if you have a multi-needle, you are conserving threads and you can plan, I want it to go to, whatever needle it's going to go to. So to do that, you click on the palettes button here, and that pulls up all the thread colors that are on this current page. So I can go in here and I want to be, since I chose I went to the other thread brand, it brought it in, but that Mettler's is actually not in the design. So I'm going to choose the white because color number 1 was that emerald black, which was color number 1. The next color is the red. So I need to choose either blue or white. Doesn't matter, but it can't be red or black. So I'm going to choose the white, click OK, and now I have my color change list here. And if you look at this, there's the black, the white, the red, white, blue, and then the black again. And it's stitching right here at the top. Okay, now now by the way, it's still hanging out here in the clipboard. The copy, whatever you copy is still hanging out. You don't have to always the last copy, I should say, is hanging out there forever until you close your program. So at this point, I do want one to stitch at the very end, right? Because I have a placement, a tack down, design. Now I need that stitch that's going to hold these two envelope-y pieces together. So now I can just hit the paste button here, and it threw it right at the end. But I don't want it to be black because I want my machine to stop. And if you notice, if I click on this guy and go to the color, that's black. And then this one is black because that's the same color. So I click on the color chip. Here's the colors currently on the page, and it can be anything but black. So I'm going to choose blue. Why not? Or maybe I'll choose white. Why not? It doesn't make a difference. Click OK. And now, black, white, red, white, blue, black, white. We have all of our color checks. But this last one is still a single run. I like to have mine do a reinforcement stitch just because I'm going to be turning these and I want them to be sturdier. I don't want to be dainty. I'm doing this last minute, guys. So I like to have a little bit more, like as if I sewed it. And when I sew, my stitch length is a shorter stitch length. And having to do with, I just get better results on my in the hoop stuff. If I change this to be a double run, and I change my stitch length to 2.2 or 2.3, whatever, doesn't make a difference. And that's just going to zip around once and then backtrack over it. A lot of in the hoop stuff, when it's a placement, it can be a single run with a longer stitch length. But when you're doing something that is construction, a stitch on a sewing machine is balanced because your bobbin thread meets your top thread right at the thread. It's a balanced stitch. But for embroidery, your top thread actually comes to the bottom of your item. I mean, that's, if you look at your back of your embroidery, you'll actually see a lot of the top thread on the back side. And that's because a balanced stitch for embroidery is not the same as sewing. So for me, the way I compensate for that, and you could be different. Yeah, we're all good. I do a double run. That's not how I would sew it. I would definitely not sew around this twice. I'd do a back tack and go to the top and do the bottom, and I'd be good. But for embroidery, putting it a double run, we're good. All right, I've got some questions here. Let's see. Gina says, I love your folded closure. Yes, I picked that up from doing somebody else's designs. I've seen that. I'm like, wow, that actually is a lot easier than turning and hand stitching, which is what I did on some of my other ones in the beginning. I'm like, so use their stuff. Amy asks, do you put a placement stitch to line up the closure too? You don't have to, because you already have your design that's stitched and you have the placement stitch already here. So there's no need to put another placement. It's still there because you're still seeing it. You know, it's not invisible because you're putting this stuff right on top of it. So I didn't need to put another placement. The only thing I have to do is put a tack down for my final one. For this particular project, if it's something that you're working on that and you don't know where to place your stuff, then yeah, I would put a placement stitch. But for this particular one, you see the running stitch from the first placement and the first tack down. It's all there, so you don't have to worry about it. Cindy says, why am I can't see this? It's hitting. Did you make garments for your past sewing life? Yes, I did. I'm 5'10", guys, with really long arms and long torso. So in order for anything to fit me, I tried it. I've made a lot of sewing things. Plus, when I was growing up, my dad would tell me, I'll buy you all the fabric you want. He thought that was going to save him money. So I would sew constantly. I'm not a perfect seamstress. I used to go to school with stapled hems, but I had a new dress. So yeah. Anyway, that's kind of funny. But yes, I use my experience from sewing in embroidery because it makes sense to me. Debbie says, let's see. I was just thinking, how do you get the paste under the original? Yes, that right click when you have something selected in create mode. So that's the two things. You have to be in create mode. And when you know you're in create mode because you're looking at your software and you have tools here for digitizing. Because that paste under, over, and replace is only digitizing tools at this time. So it's a nice way of moving stuff around because it's a pain in the butt. I have a hard time. I have ADD, if you guys hadn't figured that out yet. ADHD, whatever they want to call it. Hyperactive, that was me. Trying to, and then I get distracted and I forget what I was doing. So if I can use a right click and say, move first, that's what I'm going to do. If I can right click over here and say paste under, that's what I'm going to do, because it just makes my life a lot easier. And as you know, it's all about me making my life easier. So Diane says, whoopsie, let's see. Didn't know that. You're always copying, pasting, and moving it. Oh, well then I'm glad I taught you a shortcut. So it took a long time to get to it, but it's a practical use of it. I mean, it's in the manual and and I've said it in other times, but until you actually see it in action, you're like, light bulb. I'm gonna make sense. So, Linda says, let's see, whoopsie. What did we see? Is it to offset it on the last running stitch so the original doesn't show? That's a personal preference. If you want to make it a little bit smaller or a little bit larger, I'd go smaller. For me, it didn't matter. I chose a cute fabric on the background, and as soon as I looked at it, I'm like, oh, I can see a little bit of the outline here. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cute. So I did not offset mine. Mine are right smack dab on top of each other. If you do need to shrink it a little bit, remember that shift key, when you hold it and drag it, shrinks from center out. So you won't have to do each side one at a time. And that was just how I used to do it. Move this one in a little, move in this one a little. But this was my test sew. And based upon my test sew, I'm not doing any of that. I think this came out perfectly fine. So our life of a digitizer revolves around test sew. And Tammy says, time to save. Yes, because we never want to do that again. And if you can hit the floppy disk at the top or hit Control or Command S on your keyboard, and that saves your work. Thank you for the for the reminder. Leanne, she says, I'm an amazing sewer. Penny would argue with you. I am, oh, I have a deer outside my window. Squirrel, ADHD. And we have an elk with a baby that's here, but that's not, this is the mule deer. This is not the baby because it doesn't have a white butt. Anyway, I'm just excited outside my window. She wants to learn how to digitize. When Leanne and I get together, we like to sew. So it's always more fun to sew with friends. Diane says, how about different letters? Is that a font or a set of sketch letters? Diane, you probably need to watch the beginning. This is an existing design, and I did not digitize the whole design. It's a freebie off the Embrilliance website. And since I walked you through how this was done, you can do that with any letters you want. If you want to put something else in the center of this, I would bring in a font, and I would just bring in black letters, like a screen capture, a graphic, and scribble sketch over it, just like you'd have to make your plan and execute your plan. It is not click poof done. There was 54 objects in this design. Check out the beginning of the replay, and it'll make more sense. So this is today's project. Seriously, I got this from software to machine in 26 minutes. And I actually timed myself. And that's because I kind of got, ooh, look how cool this is. I got a little sidetracked checking out Eric's digitizing. And hopefully you guys do too. Because it's a great way to learn is by pulling apart a BE file. Normally we don't have that opportunity. If you go to, the only ones that really provide BE files are people that digitize in StitchArtist, and so you'll have your own BE files, but there are no websites that sell BE files because that's an object file. Heather says you need an Australian mug rug. Yes. If I do, I would have to, I'd probably put Oz because I would, but that'd be a great way of doing it. You could do AUS because that would be the same thing. Oh, same letters. Ooh. Well, you couldn't just move the letters around because as you saw, those scribble stitches are there. And your flag's different. So you couldn't just do that there. But, hey, wheels are turning. A neat idea. Gina says 5'10", but you look so petite on the screen. Well, that's because I'm small. Yeah, petite's never been a word to describe me. Not ever. Not ever. Anyway, so that's today's project, guys. Hopefully you got some cool ideas, and like I said, this is gonna be a download from the Embrilliance project blog in the next couple days because they'll have to be stitchable for the 4th of July, but I'd say soon. So make sure you sign up for the Embrilliance newsletter, follow the Embrilliance Facebook page. This was real fun for me, and hopefully you guys learned a lot. And if you have StitchArtist level 1, don't be afraid of it. Get in there and play. I mean, especially pull apart someone else's BE design. There's over 4 or 5 years of designs, BE files available on the Embrilliance website. It's a great way to learn how to digitize. Check out the stitch type properties. They've all been tested. They've all been stitched. So why not? Anyway, all right, guys. Have a great night, and I will see you online later. Take care. Bye.